Hello and welcome back to English 2. I'm your online instructor, Miss Abear. Remember, we are looking at our notice and note strategies, those close reading strategies that will help us make meaning of what it is that we are reading. So yesterday you were introduced to the strategy contrasts and contradictions. That is when a character does something that is unexpected. You don't know what's coming, or he or she does something that's out of character. If you remember, Roger tried to steal Miss Luella Washington Bates Jones. He tried to steal her purse, and she did some really interesting things when she tried to steal her purse. And so that was in contrast to what we would have expected her to do. And so what we asked you to do was to stop and notice that contrast happened, and then you were going to stop and ask yourself the question, why is the character doing that? That strategy will help you make an inference or a prediction about the plot or conflict. And today we're going to look at a signpost that's called an aha moment. An aha moment is when something happens and you go, oh my gosh, I did not realize that was going to happen. For instance, let's say that you walk into your classroom today and your friends are just frantically studying a textbook or a piece of paper. You may ask yourself, why are they doing that? When the light bulb moment goes off and you go, oh my gosh, we have a test and I didn't study for that test. That light bulb moment that you had is what we call an aha moment. We have those all the time in our regular lives, so it should be really easy for you to find that in the text that we're reading. So in the aha moment, you're going to stop, notice, and note. When you're reading and suddenly a character realizes, understands, or finally figures something out, you should stop and ask yourself, how might this change things? If the character figured out a problem, you probably just learned something about the conflict. If the character understood a life lesson, you probably just learned the theme for that story. And again, this is an easy one because we have those light bulb moments all the time. And so we're going to look at a text today, Crash by Jerry Spinelli. This Crash has got some great things that we can see when he has those light bulb moments. But we're not going to read the whole book. We're just going to read excerpts from it. But it's about a middle school kid named Crash who bullies another kid. And we know about those bullies, and hopefully by the 10th grade we don't have those bullies anymore. But we're going to see how Crash and this boy that he's been bullying, how they interact and where some of these aha moments happen. So you have your text in front of you. I have mine in front of me. So why don't you follow along and I will show you where we will stop for that aha moment. It was a sunny summer day. I was in the front yard digging a hole with my little red shovel. I heard something like whistling. I looked up. It was whistling. It was coming from a funny-looking, dorky little runt walking up the sidewalk. Only he wasn't just walking regular. He was walking like he owned the place, both hands in his pockets, sort of swaying la-di-da with each step, strolling and gawking at the houses and whistling a happy little dorky tune like some Sneezy or Snoozy or whatever their names are. And he wore a button, a big one. It covered about half of his chest, which wasn't that hard since his chest was so scrawny. So here he comes, strolling, whistling, gawking, buttoning, dorking up the sidewalk, onto my sidewalk, my property. And all of a sudden, I knew what I had to do. Like there was a big announcement coming down from the sky. Don't let him pass. So I'm going to stop here because I have a cue, and this authors will give us cues on these light bulb moments sometimes. This one, the author said, all of a sudden I knew what I had to do. And so I realized the author has given me a clue as to what I should do. I should be discovering something here. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask myself what this means. And so at this moment, I'm going to say, how might this change things? Well, I know a little bit about the book. I know that there's some bullying happening, but I'm not exactly sure what's going on? But the author here tells us what the answer to that question is. That doesn't happen every time, but it happens sometimes. What was that answer to that? How might this change things? That's right. That answer was, do not let him pass. So Crash is our narrator here, and he is saying he's not going to let this kid pass. That was his aha moment. So let's see how that might change things in the future for this. In this next section, we find out that Crash and Penn is the kid that Crash has been bullying, are about to compete against each other in a school race. Webb's parents and his great-grandfather, Henry Wilhide Webb III, have come to watch Penn run. Crash is looking at the three of them in the stands, thinking of his own grandfather, Scooter. Until now, Crash has continued to bully Penn. As I read, see if you notice the aha that Crash has. When you do, I want you to write aha or draw a little light bulb in the margin of your text. So follow along with me as I read. The stands were empty. A school bus moved in the distance beyond the football goalpost. Under the crossbar and between the uprights, like a framed picture, stood three people. For once, Webb's parents didn't look so old, not compared to the man standing between them. He was shorter than them and real skinny, like the prairie winds were eroding him away. But he was standing straight and by himself, no cane, no walker, just two legs. 93 years old. Maybe it was the Missouri River mud. The thought came to me. They would have liked each other, Scooter and Henry Wilhide Webb III, two storytellers, both from the great flat open spaces. One a prairie of grass, one of water. Both came to watch when no one else was there. Did you hear the aha? When I saw the phrase, the thought came to me, I knew Crash had figured something out. Had that aha moment, because those aha moments give us insight, something the character now understands. So we want to stop and ask ourselves, how might this change things? How might Crash's realization that his grandfather and Penn's grandfather, how might that change things? So I want you to stop and I want you to turn to your neighbor and I want you to talk about how you think this might change things. All right, let's come back together as a group, and these are some of the things that I heard you guys saying. If Crash thinks their grandfathers could be friends, maybe he and Penn might actually be friends. That's a stretch, if you ask me, for someone who's been bullying another person, that they're all of a sudden going to be friends. But I might tend to agree with that a little bit. How is it that Crash knew so much about his grandfather? How is it that he knew he was 93 years old? How is it that he knows so much about Penn's grandfather? Maybe they were friends before. Sometimes that happens, you know. Sometimes we're friends with someone and then all of a sudden something happens between us. Still doesn't understand the bullying that happened between them, but it might give us some insight as to what might happen and how things might change if we think they were friends before. Another thing that I heard was maybe Crash is second guessing his treatment of Penn, or Webb Penn is his name, because of his grandfather. Those are some great thoughts, and I tend to agree with you. I think that that maybe these are some of the things that will change. Maybe they will become friends. But let's read a little bit further and see. When I read, and you're going to follow along, again, I want you to, in your text, to mark the spots where you think the author is giving you a clue as to an aha moment. Remember, you want to write aha, which is a really short word, or you can draw a light bulb, whichever way works best for you. But follow along with me as I read. Why exactly was he here? Did he know about me? Did he know his great-grandson could not win the race off and so would not run in the Penn relays? I wonder if Webb felt safe in his great-grandfather's bed. The cinder track crunched under my feet. There were 5 of us in the race. Me, Webb, 2 other 7th graders, and a 6th grader. The coach put us in lanes. Me and Webb were side by side. Again, he hadn't said a word to me all day. We milled around behind the starting blocks, nervous, shaking out our arms and legs. Everything as quiet as if the coach had already said, ready. The other team members, jumpers, throwers, distance runners, had all stopped their practicing to watch. A single hawk, its wingtips spread like black fingers, kited over the school. And suddenly I saw something. A gift for a great-grandfather from North Dakota, maybe for all great-grandfathers. But the thing was, only one person could give the gift, and it wasn't the great-grandson, not on the fastest day he was alive. It was me. I hated it being me. I tried not to see, but everywhere I looked, there it was, the gift. Okay, this one's a little tricky. Look at the paragraph that begins with the other team members once more. On your own, I want you to underline the realization Crash has had. What was it? That's right. It's the phrase, suddenly I saw something. It's a little bit harder because you might think he literally saw something, but he saw something in his mind. And what was it that he saw? A gift. And not just any gift, a gift that only he could give. So I want you to think about that for a minute, and I want you to think and write, how might this change things? Think about what the author is saying and doing. Think about Crash and his bullying to Penn, and I want you to write down beside your aha moment, how might this change things? And then I want you to write that down. I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to talk about it. I'm going to walk around while you guys talk, and we'll come back together. All right, I heard some great thinking. Here's some of the things that I heard. I bet Crash is going to let Penn win the race. I bet that is the gift. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if the gift could be his friendship. Like if the grandfathers could have been friends, why couldn't Crash and Penn be friends? Those are some great thoughts. Crash has just realized that he could give Penn's great-grandfather a gift. And he's the only one because he's the fastest runner, right? Those are some great thoughts. I want to see if our thoughts, the things that we're thinking, let's see if they line up. Let's read a little bit further and see what happens in the text and see if what we thought is what happens. So follow along with me. Again, keep your pencil in your hand, and I want you to either write aha beside those aha moments or draw a little light bulb. So follow along with me as I read. "Let's go, boys," said the coach. A voice closer to me said, "Good luck." It was Webb, sticking out his dorky hand, smiling that dorky smile of his. No button. I shook his hand, and it occurred to me that because he was always eating my dust, the dumb fish cake had never won a race, a real race, and probably didn't know how. And now there wasn't time. "Don't forget to lean," I told him. His face went blank. The coach called, "Ready?" I got down, feet on the blocks, right knee on the track, thumbs and forefingers on the chalk, eyes straight down. And right then, for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to win. "Set!" Knees up, rear up, eyes up. The coach says the most important thing here is to focus your mind. You are a coiled steel spring, ready to dart out at the sound of the gun. So what comes into my head? Ollie the one-armed octopus. He didn't disappear until the gun went off. I was behind, not only Webb, but everybody. No problem. Within 10 strides, I picked up 3 of them. That left Webb. He was farther ahead of me than usual, but that was because of my rotten start. At the halfway mark, where I usually passed him, he was still ahead, and I didn't know if I wanted to win. I gassed it. The gap closed. I could hear him puffing like a second set of footsteps. Cinder flecks from his feet pecked at my shins. I was still behind. The finish line was closing. I kicked in the afterburners. 10 meters from the white string, we were shoulder to shoulder, breath to breath, grandson to great-grandson. And it felt new. It felt good, not being behind, not being ahead, but being even. And just like that, a half breath from the white string, I knew. There was no time to turn to him. I just barked it out, "Lean!" He leaned, threw his chest out, and broke the string. He won. All right, that is the end of this section. I saw you underlining some passages as I was reading, phrases and words that showed you those aha moments Crash had. Take a moment or two and look back at those places that you marked, and I want you to write down the answer to that question. And what was that question for our aha moments? That's right. How might this change things? So I want you to jot your thoughts down on your paper in the margins, and then once you've got your own thoughts written down, I want you to turn to your shoulder partner and ask yourselves and discuss that aha moment as well as that question. How might this change things? All right, let's talk about what you found. Here are some of the things that I heard as I was walking around. When Crash thinks, "I still didn't know if I wanted to win," I think that's an aha moment. His thoughts keep coming back and forth. He's trying to come to terms with his previous aha moment, the gift. That's a good thought. That was some real insight. I really liked how that person went back to the text to quote what they had read and what that means. Another great quote that I heard, or another great conversation that I heard, was when Crash thinks, "And just like that, I knew." That was that aha moment. He knew that he had to give Penn's great-grandfather the gift of Penn winning that race. So how might that change things? These are some great thoughts. The answers to these questions are going to give you some great insight to your text as you're reading along. So one of the things about these aha moments is that they do help you understand the conflict of the story. It helps you understand the theme, helps you understand those life lessons. So let's take a minute and let's look at what you should do when you notice an aha moment in a text. You should stop and ask yourself, how might this change things? If the character figures out a problem, you probably just learned about the conflict. If the character understood a life lesson, you probably learned the theme. If you haven't read Crash, I suggest that you go back and maybe think about reading that tonight. That could be your reading if you don't have an independent reading novel, because some of you may really like that book, and I think you would. So lastly, let's look at how the map will ask those questions when you're taking the map assessment. What evidence from the text supports the theme of blank in this text? So they might give you the theme and then ask you for that evidence. That person in the that I said I heard, they quoted that evidence. Great use of evidence. Perfect. That's what we're looking for. What statements or actions led to a shift in the advancement of the story? That kind of sounds like one that we read yesterday with our contrasts and contradictions, doesn't it? Absolutely. Because a lot of these will overlap. What character can be described as complex based on motivations? Guys, I hope that you heard it. Crash changed throughout this text in just the short amount of time, that the short excerpts that we read. He was definitely complex, but be ready to talk about how those motivations made him complex. And lastly, what interactions between characters contribute to the development of the theme? These are some great questions that will be asked on the map assessment. And I hope that you are now prepared for some of those theme and conflict questions that come up on those map assessments. So for today, we are finished with our lesson for aha moments. Your teacher will have a couple of things for you to do to get prepared for tomorrow's lesson. Tomorrow, we will be looking at tough questions. And so I'll look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day.